Welcome back to another episode here at Blue Duck Fantasy Football. As we get closer to the start of the season, we're going to be doing more and more mocks. Today we were doing a PPR mock draft, picking in the middle of the draft. So we're at pick 6. So this is going to be a good guide to what you can be doing, what you should be doing if you have this pick. First 4 picks are going to be the running backs, and then that's when it opens up. And do you go running back or do you go wide receiver? And that's the big question at this spot. Let's get right into the draft, and let's see what happens. Kamara number 1. Interesting. Last time we did a draft, or one of the times we did a draft, we saw Dalvin Cook go ahead of Christian McCaffrey. So to see Alvin Kamara go now, any of them could finish as number 1, but Christian McCaffrey should still be the number 1 pick. Saquon Barkley, will he be healthy come week 1? So this is a question that, as of today, I'm going to say no. But if it gets close to the season and it does appear that he is going to be healthy, I would absolutely pick him. Jonathan Taylor has fallen back for me because of the injury to the center and the fact that he could be out several weeks. But now I'm hearing Carson Wentz might be back and ready to play for week 1. Although that's unlikely, I have heard that rumor. So with them having the same injury or very similar injury, could we see the Pro Bowl center back week 1? If that's the case, then Jonathan Taylor would go back up my rankings. Nick Chubb isn't a terrible pick, but I want to play it as safe as possible here, my first-round pick. Usually you're not going to win your fantasy football league with your first-round pick, but you can lose it. So I'm going to take the safe pick, and I'll take Tyreek Hill at the number 6 spot. So I'm choosing to go wide receiver because I feel it's safer. Yes, I'm going to miss out on one of these elite running backs, elite in quotations, because there are questions with a lot of them. Nick Chubb, will he get enough work? I do believe that he will get maybe not as much work as a guy like Saquon Barkley, but he's going to get better work. Will Saquon play a full 17 games? And will Jonathan Taylor be able to run behind a line that doesn't have that Pro Bowl center? So we'll see. But I'm taking the safer pick. And now we're into round 2. And let's take a look at my rankings to see who I have where. Of course, you can find our rankings at Blue Duck Fantasy Football. So here are the running back rankings. So looking to see who might still be available. I'm guessing a Joe Mixon would be. I'm going to take a quick look at the wide receiver rankings to see who my pick would be here. So I didn't check. Diggs, Adams, Hopkins, Jefferson are gone. That leaves Calvin Ridley, and I think that might just be too good of an opportunity to pass up. As you can see, he is my number 3 ranked my number 1 ranked overall. Of course, my rankings are here. Matt's are here. Tyreek Hill, my number 2. I didn't take Calvin Ridley because I thought Calvin Ridley had a chance to fall. I don't mind Devontae Adams at my pick either. If Tyreek Hill had already gone, I would have probably went with Devontae Adams. So that makes it fairly easy for me to make the decision to continue to go wide receiver. And no, this is not another 0 RB strategy that we're doing. Of course, we did one of those last time, so feel free to check that out. Showing you right now, this is the Adp Calculator Spreadsheet, Google Sheet, whatever you want to call it. It shows you where everybody is going based off of ADP. As you can see, Devontae Adams is 7. And Tyreek Hill is 10. Again, those two fairly interchangeable for me. So taking one of them at 6 could have went either one. But it's showing here Calvin Ridley usually does make it past this spot, but Justin Jefferson usually makes it all the way to the end of the round. Running backs here, we'd be looking at about a J.K. Dobbins coming back, maybe a Chris Carson. I do like Josh Jacobs a lot, and then Myles Gaskin would be the best that we would do here. So I'm going to gamble on that strategy, especially with a name like Mike Davis, who's still going to be out there. I am going to go wide receiver. I'm not going to try and force one of these running backs. Gibson would be the pick if I decided to go running back, but I just think the value and the drop from Calvin Ridley to the next player, I guess DK would be the next player. But I do like Calvin Ridley more than DK. And as much as I like these guys here, they're not on the same tier as Calvin Ridley. So this is too good of a value for me to pass up. And we're going wide receiver, and we're going to be definitely trying to force a running back coming back. Okay, so it's back to us. Dobbins went, Swift went, Gibson went. CEH, and Najee Harris went. So who's available at running back? It's Josh Jacobs, and that's probably going to be our pick. Taking a look here at wide receiver, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, Julio. These guys are all kind of in the same tier for me. There's no end of a tier that like Keenan Allen, I guess, kind of would be, but Allen Robinson's very close. Just check the rankings. I might have Robinson actually higher. I'm going to go by mine. I do have Robinson higher, so and all these guys in the similar tier for me, so I'm not overly concerned. Everybody's loving Keenan Allen this year. I'm not sure why he's gotten so much praise. I guess it's the Herbert love. But we're going to go with Josh Jacobs, who I don't believe is going to see a reduction in volume. John Gruden's been coaching for a very long time. He was a head coach back in the early 2000s, took some time off, came back. He's always had running backs get 220-plus touches, minimum. He goes with a workhorse bell cow running back. He's not by committee. Kenyon Drake will probably be more of a threat into the passing game. They might use him like that, but I don't see him getting more than, say, 80 carries. So Josh Jacobs it is. A lot of wide receivers is good for us. There goes Carson. There goes Darrell Henderson. There goes David Montgomery and Miles Sanders. So we miss out on pretty much everybody. And the next player that could be looking at, I would prefer would be Myles Gaskin. Mike Davis I like as well. So we're just going to check the ADP chart to see where these guys fall. So Gaskin won't make it back, but Mike Davis could make it back. And I think that's a good enough gamble. We're going to take a quick peek at wide receiver. I don't think we're going to be looking at quarterback, and we're definitely not looking at tight end right now. As much as I love TJ Hawkinson, I'm happy to wait another round, possibly two, to get him. But again, wide receiver, Chris Godwin, CeeDee Lamb, some good names here that would fill out our third wide receiver spot. And then we could get Mike Davis, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I had three backs. And again, I fully believe Josh Jacobs is going to be a workhorse. I believe Myles Gaskin will be a workhorse as well, as long as he's healthy. And I do believe Mike Davis will be a workhorse. So we're going with the guys who are basically locks to get the volume. So Myles Gaskin, welcome to the team. Okay, so it comes back to us, and Mike Davis is still available. Are we going to take him here, or are we going to wait? We look at wide receiver to see what's there, and none of these names stick out except for Michael Thomas, who I've mentioned and talked about is not somebody I want to take until I've at least filled out my starting lineup. So he'd be somebody I'd be looking at sixth, probably not even sixth, more like seventh. It's good to see that his his ranking here has been affected because ADP is probably still fairly high. Just trying to find him here. Yeah. So it is late sixth, which I guess is kind of where they have him beside Odell Beckham. And again, this spreadsheet is free. Just Google Sheets. The link will be in the description. So it is saying that Mike Davis would be our pick here. We'd be missing out on TJ Hawkinson. And we can grab a good wide receiver coming back. Mike Davis is going to be the pick. And now we have our three running backs. They're not the sexiest name, Gaskin and Davis especially, but I think Jacobs' upside is there, and people are underrating him this year. We see Michael Thomas is gone, Kenny Galladay is gone, Odell Beckham is gone. Now we're looking at wide receiver or tight end, as TJ Hawkinson has made it back to us in the sixth round. He's most likely going to be the pick simply because I'll take any one of these guys in this list. Versus tight end, I really think there's a big drop. He is the player there, one of the highest rated ones from the all. And from the flex, he is the highest rated player. He is my number 4 tight end behind the big three, but I do believe that he's going to be knocking on the door of that tier this season, especially with who else. Like, they don't really have much else there. And I think Goff has used the tight end fairly well in his time with the Rams, so I don't see any reason why he wouldn't continue to do that in Detroit. New coaching staff, no longer the coaching staff that basically ignored tight ends. So TJ Hawkinson on the team for the third straight time. I apologize, but he's a guy I'm looking at all the time. And it's wide receiver time for us, looking to fill out that third spot. Jalen Waddle is probably too deep of a sleeper to really be considered. Deebo Samuel is probably the pick. Landry or Boyd are nice safe picks as well. Robbie Anderson, not a bad pick as well. I'm just going to check my rankings. Of course, you can find these at blueduckfantasy.com. And my rankings and Matt's rankings. And I'm just scrolling through mine here to see who my pick would be. Chark Thomas. So Deebo looks to be the next available best player for me. I do have Deebo ahead of Ayuk, but I think they're very close. I think people are overpaying for Ayuk and people are underpaying for Deebo Samuel. Robbie Anderson is close there, and Jerry Jeudy close as well. Just going to scroll down to make sure I'm not missing anyone. No, and I'll be happy taking Deebo Samuel as my third wide receiver. I see him having a solid top 25, top 30 season. And, yeah. So, as we can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams have taken a quarterback. Everyone but us and this team have taken a quarterback, and we're going to continue to wait because when you look at quarterback, you see there's Burrow, there's Stafford, there's Hurts, there's Tannehill. Well, not so much Watson, but there are 4 names. Justin Fields played really well on the weekend as well. Matt Ryan is another player I'm fine with at quarterback. Kirk Cousins is a bit of a stretch. Tua is not the ideal candidate, but he could be somebody that if you do wait on quarterback, you can take as a second quarterback and bank on that upside. But we're not looking quarterback, and we probably won't be for several more rounds until the AI starts picking backup quarterbacks, and then we'll be forced to do it. Michael Carter, a very interesting name. Kenyon Drake is kind of an interesting name as a handcuff, but it's far too early for that. Zach Moss, another player I like, but not as much as Michael Carter. Wide receiver, we have Brandon Cooks, who would be a nice fit on this team. Chanot, Landry, Boyd are nice safe picks as well. So I just feel like there's more of these players that we could take here to have as our fourth wide receiver to fill in than there is at running back. I like Michael Carter far too much. He has the possibility of being the number one running back in New York, and he's being underrated as well. I mean, going after a guy like James Conner, sure there's the upside there, but I mean, Trey Sermon, sorry, I don't understand that. Like, you can't be going in the same round as the starter. Michael Carter, welcome to the team again. I think this is 3 straight for him as well. So kind of get an idea of the guys that I like. We'll be having a video on that coming shortly as well. Of course, if you don't yet, make sure to check us out on Instagram and on Twitter. All the links to that are in the description. So now the backup quarterbacks are starting to go, and my question is, do I need to go quarterback now or can I wait? I'm going to gamble and wait, and I'm going to look for wide receivers or running backs that I might like. I tend to always draft a lot of running back depth at the draft, simply because a wide receiver can kind of come out of nowhere. It's rare for a running back to come out of nowhere. They usually just kind of fill in for an injury. So, I mean, we had Justin Jefferson last year with his huge season. We've had plenty of examples of guys that are maybe on the waiver wire or picked late in drafts that go off for wide receiver. But for running back, outside of like James Robinson and again, Myles Gaskin last year, but those are both guys that probably just weren't drafted and hit the spot. I do like Zach Moss. I do like Antonio Brown as well. I'm just looking at this landscape here. Darnell Mooney, there's still some names. Okay, given our running backs and the fact that we have 4, I'm going to pivot to wide receiver. If I was stronger at wide receiver, I probably would go Zach Moss here. I'm definitely not taking a backup tight end. I've spent nice draft capital on a tight end, so I'm not going to get a second one. I am going to go with Antonio Brown here, and I do think that he, having a full season or almost a full season last year, started to really come on near the end, and this is not the first draft I've gotten him in. I don't know if it's 3 for 3 for him. It's definitely 2 out of 3. So the quarterbacks are going, and we're probably going to have to take a quarterback with this pick as Zach Moss goes. So let's see what's available. We're the last team to pick a quarterback. This team has Wilson and Stafford. The question is why? Why would you need those two guys? You're just going to give yourself a headache as to who you're going to start every week. So our options are Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields, Matt Ryan, and I'm not thrilled with any of these options, so I will wait again. So we're going to keep picking skill position players, and now the decision is, do we want more running back depth, or do we want wide receiver depth? And to me, the answer is always running back depth. You never know who can get a starting spot and who can have that trade value just jump up, because people always need running backs. So this is where I'm going to start going running back heavy. A.J. Dillon's an interesting name, not somebody that I've drafted in too many drafts. Not the biggest fan of Devin Singletary. Nyheim Hines, I think that's just kind of too many mouths to feed in that backfield. Gus Edwards is a nice pick. Gus Edwards is an underrated player. He is going to get the third most touches in that backfield, second most out of the running backs, of course. Tony Pollard is also a nice player that ends up on my team often. J.D. McKissick in PPR formats like this one. Philip Lindsay and Kenneth Gainwell are other players that I like. So Gainwell only in PPR. Madison. I'm going to go with A.J. Dillon. It's a different pick. He could end up being, like, he takes an injury and all of a sudden he's a top 10 running back. So that upside is really big, even if he just plays a week or two. So let's go A.J. Dillon, a little bit different from usual. Quarterbacks, going Nyheim Hines, Gallup. Okay, back to us, and again, like, wide receiver is whatever. Let's go with another running back, and let's go with Gus Edwards. To me, makes a lot of sense, and as is Tony Pollard. Any of these guys are good. I'm thinking Philip Lindsay will probably fall, and I can get him later. J.D. McKissick, probably the same situation. Of course, Alexander Mattison would be a great handcuff to have as well, even if you don't have Dalvin Cook. I'm going to go with Gus Edwards just because I think that he's going to have more week-to-week value. Let's go with him. So there goes Baker. There goes Tony Pollard. There goes Justin Fields. Still haven't taken a quarterback. There goes Matt Ryan. So it looks like we might get stuck with Kirk Cousins unless he goes here. There goes Lindsey. Surprising. So now at quarterback, we are down to not a lot. Kirk Cousins or Tua, and how many people need a backup quarterback behind me. So very important to always check to see. It looks like 3 teams need a backup. I don't think I want to risk it anymore, even though Tua isn't that high on the rankings. I don't want to end up with somebody down here. So I will go with Tua Tagovailoa as the quarterback. I wouldn't be opposed to taking somebody like Ryan Fitzpatrick with a later pick, simply because if Tua has the type of performance that he had last season, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is great when it comes to fantasy numbers, would be able to put up some really nice stats, although inconsistently. All right, let's go Tua before we run out of quarterbacks. So we waited for the 12th round to take a quarterback. The sweet spot to take a quarterback would have probably been 12, 11, 10 in the 9th round. So we could have gotten a Jalen Hurts or Ryan Tannehill. I have picked Hurts in drafts previously. And I was hoping Matt Ryan would make it back. I did take him in another draft as well. No other quarterbacks went. Kirk Cousins did go. So there's a chance that we could have missed out on Tua. Now back to us. Let's take a look at running backs. Let's take a look at wide receivers. And let's go with an interesting player that I think might have a bigger role than some people are expecting, and that's Rondale Moore. He is an injury risk, but this isn't a dynasty league. I'm not worried about his long-term health. I'm worried about his first-year performance, and I don't buy the A.J. Green hype. I think they need a number 2, and it's not Christian Kirk. So welcome to the team, Rondale Moore, and he's going to be a kind of player that you might have to hold for more than 2 weeks just to see what his role kind of develops into. But he does have tremendous upside, especially in PPR leagues. And there goes A.J. Green. So now back to us. Paris Campbell, an interesting name that I usually get in drafts. Brian Edwards, another player that I tend to get in drafts. If you haven't checked out our other draft videos, make sure you do. Link will be in the comments. It's also a playlist, so you should be able to just find it from there. Tariq Cohen, Javian Hawkins, Marlon Mack. So I'm not going to do the second quarterback. Whoever's on the waiver wire will be fine with me. So now I'm deciding between running back and wide receiver. Nothing at running back jumps out to me. I'd be fine with grabbing pretty much any of these guys, whether it be Marlon Mack or I'm not really interested in Tyreek Cohen, but a Marlon Mack or Sony Michel. I mean, even a Boston Scott. Damian Williams would be an interesting choice since he has, he would be the handcuff if we had gone with David Montgomery. I always get those names mixed up. David Montgomery earlier instead of Josh Jacobs. But let's go wide receiver. Paris Campbell. It's between Paris Campbell and Bryan Edwards. I just go with the higher ranked player. We can check the ADP chart to see who would actually go where. Little control F. Edwards goes in the 18th round. And Campbell goes in the 20th round. So ADP is flipped. Bryan Edwards has moved up a lot in the ADP, about 60 spots. So he's one of the risers. We could get Bryan Edwards again here. We could look at running back and see what else is there. I think it's about time to get Marlon Mack. So back-to-back Colts works for me. And we'll see what comes down in the end with our last pick. Again, Marlon Mack, I think is he's not the most talented guy, but if that line is healthy, pretty much anybody can run behind there. There goes Salvin Ahmed, another decent pick. So with your last pick, you kind of want to grab a guy who's going to be like a 2-week player, like somebody you're going to see within 2 weeks whether or not they have a role, and you can drop them or you can trade them or you can start them. And I think somebody who's going to fit that is probably going to be Bryan Edwards. And let's go with Bryan Edwards. And that's going to complete the draft. So we look at our team. We have Tua at quarterback. Yes, we probably waited a bit too long to grab a quarterback. So now we're gambling that Tua will take that sophomore step forward. And if he doesn't, we're going to be looking at the waiver wire to pick up somebody like Ben Roethlisberger, who wasn't drafted. One of the Saints quarterbacks, whoever is the one that is the starter week 1, we're probably going to want to be in the waivers picking that person up and possibly dropping one of these last 3 picks, depending on what happens in the preseason. But it would probably lean towards Mack, since Mack has not the clearest chance to score points, where Edwards doesn't have that much wide receiver competition, and neither does Paris Campbell. At running back, Josh Jacobs, Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, and Michael Carter. No big-name running backs. No, this wasn't a 0 RB, as I mentioned. We did go Jacobs in the 3rd, Gaskin in the 4th, and Mike Davis in the 5th. So we went with the sure things at wide receiver instead of gambling on the running backs that are your Chubbs, Barkley, Taylors. I don't think Jones is a gamble. I just think that his inconsistency is, kind of hit and miss. I didn't mind Gibson at this pick, but I just thought that Gibson to Jacobs versus Ridley to the next person is too big a gap. I think Ridley has a great shot of finishing as number 1 wide receiver, which is why he is my number 1 wide receiver in PPR. Is not in not in non-PPR, but in PPR formats, he is my number 1. So I have my number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in PPR. Our 3rd wide receiver takes a step back. He's like about a top 30 guy. TJ Hawkinson, a top 4 tight end, and Mike Davis is an undervalued player who's going to bring back, top 25 value. Michael Carter is also a player who could get into that top 25 mix. I mean, who knows? He has that Alvin Kamara type of skill set where he gets the ball in space. He's very elusive, very tough to take down. Can he handle a full workload? Probably not, but in a PPR league, is he going to catch a handful of passes every game? He should. Antonio Brown is our first bench wide receiver, and he's a pretty solid fit. There will probably be weeks where we debate between Debo and Antonio Brown, depending on the matchup. Do we think that the Bucs are going to score a lot of points? Do we think that San Fran's going to run a lot? A.J. Dillon, Gus Edwards, Marlon Mack, those are 3 players that are just on our bench for depth. An injury to the starter makes him big. He's probably going to have a role day-to-day and could cut into Aaron Jones as well. He could get the goal line work. He could have value to trade to the Aaron Jones owner and maybe improve one of our other positions, maybe get ourselves a Keenan Allen while trading him and Debo and something else, obviously, in order to get that. Gus Edwards is the number 2 running back option in Baltimore. And any injury to the starter there puts him in the J.K. Dobbins role. And might not be as good as J.K. Dobbins, but he's a fairly good runner. And he's a solid running back. Not the biggest pass catcher. So PPR leagues, he has that little bit of negative. But he's not as stone-handed as he used to be. Rondale Moore is going to be a boomer bust pick. We're probably going to only wait a couple weeks to see what he does and then move on from him. And unfortunately, that might be the wrong decision, because if his role doesn't get carved out till week 6 or something, then we're looking to get him on the waiver. And if you're spending fab or have the waiver spot, it's going to cost you that. But we're going to be a bit impatient as we try to get the best players on our team. Paris Campbell, again, in a similar situation for Marlon Mack. Paris Campbell is without a doubt a 2-week player, even though their quarterback might not be back till week 6 or week 5. Marlon Mack, we're going to see what his role is as well. And Bryan Edwards. These last 3-4 guys are kind of in that 2-week range. And I call these 2-week players simply because you draft them, you give them 2 weeks, and then you do whatever you got to do with them. Bryan Edwards is the number 1 wide receiver. There, you're going to package him with Deebo Samuel for a better wide receiver to a team that's thin at wide receiver. Paris Campbell's the number 1, same thing. Rondale Moore is, putting up fantastic stats in this offense. He's the number 2 option on a high-scoring offense, and he is worth a lot. You could package him as well. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Here are the teams so you can see them as well as possible to wrap up this video. Any comments on any picks that you would have done that I did that you didn't like, or picks that you did like, feel free to leave that down below. Appreciate it. It helps us out. Make sure to hit that like button if you made it this far in the video, and subscribe. And that's it.